Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. It's that time of the week again. We're going to take a look at college football prospects and see who performed the best at various key positions in the most recent week. And I'll tell you, offensively, it was not a great week. I was not crazy impressed with the quarterbacks, the tight ends, and the offensive line play. So we're going to get through some guys here. We're going to talk about the guys that need to be talked about, but I'll tell you, we're starting to really narrow in on a handful of really impressive guys in these areas. And there's a decent amount that's left wanting, especially at positions like tight end. Now, we're going to start with quarterback. And I had to kind of expand my search radius a little bit here. I had to have an open mind here when trying to categorize guys because there just really wasn't that much that was good. Spencer Rattler made my list. He had a really nice game for South Carolina, but they were playing I think they were playing Jacksonville State, an easy win for them. 400 yards, good completion percentage, two touchdowns, a rushing touchdown, 80.1 PFF grade. And really, we should give Spencer Rattler a little more credit than we are probably because he's playing behind such a terrible offensive line, but I don't know. I've been a little disappointed in Rattler so far this year. KJ Jefferson, I don't think he's been very good this year, and his team has not been very good this year, but we got to put him on this list once, and this week he deserves it because he played really well in an upset win over the Florida Gators. 255 yards, two touchdowns, a pick, 92 rushing yards. So he finally had a big game running the ball, a touchdown on the ground, 70.9 PFF grade in the OT win. So I'm down on KJ Jefferson because he just hasn't had a very good year. And I think that he probably made a mistake staying back for another year of college. But he was good this week. So we got to mention him when he deserves it. Uh, Jordan Travis is my next guy, and he just kind of had a typical Jordan Travis day. 360 yards and a touchdown in a kind of underwhelming game for the FSU offense. His 69.3 PFF grade, though, is actually his lowest this season, which I think is actually a tremendous point in his favor. Like 69.3 being your worst score of the year, I think it is anyway, is actually really nice. It shows how consistent he's been, and I wasn't really into him before the season started, but he's starting to win me over. He really is. So good for Jordan Travis. He's grinding. He's playing well, playing hard. Good stuff from the FSU quarterback. Bo Nix, initially, it seemed like it wasn't going to be his week. He started with a turnover. He had an early turnover, but then Oregon turned it on, and he ended up with almost 400 passing yards, high completion percentage, four touchdowns, the one interception, ran for two touchdowns, 91.9 PFF grade is a season high. So Bo Nix cannot be stopped and will not be stopped. Every week it feels like he's here because he's putting up such big numbers. And the final guy, I don't really like putting this guy on this list because we're never going to be able to draft him. It's pointless to talk about, but I ran out of guys. I ran out of guys who played noticeably well this week that are draft targets. So I'm just going to put him here because Caleb played great. Not his fault, his defense is terrible. 27 to 35, 312 yards, three touchdowns, 16 rushing yards, and a touchdown. Some of the stuff he does is unfair. Like his 70 PFF grade is actually one of his lower scores of the year. Like this guy's going to be so good. Like I'm perfectly happy with the way things are right now, but I cannot lie. Caleb Williams is a quarterback prospect to die for. I'm into everything that he's bringing on that football field right now, except for the fact that he plays for the Trojans. Okay. So now we're going to move on to tight end here, and it was not a good week for tight ends overall for me. I was not impressed with most. Nobody had a really huge game. There were a couple of good games, but man, I am underwhelmed. Ben Sinote of KSU, he's back here. He had almost 70 yards on five catches, 65.6 PFF grade. Okay, sure. I'm not jumping up and down in my seat over that, but it's solid. Bryson Nesbitt probably had the best week of any tight end catching the ball. Six catches, 78 yards, and UNC ran the ball all over their opponent. The problem is they were playing like Old Dominion or one of those schools. A free win. So that doesn't even really mean much. 68.8 PFF grade. Jaheim Bell of FSU, five catches for 23 yards. That's the kind of week it was. You could have a game where you have 23 receiving yards and you still make my list. So, yeah. 70.7 PFF grade, though. He played well. Brevin Spanford had one of his best games of the year, which is not saying a heck of a lot, but good for Mr. Spanford of the Golden Gophers. 3 catches, 58 yards, and a touchdown. 80.3 PFF grade. Did some nice work blocking. McCallhan Castles is an interesting tight end sleeper. I haven't had the opportunity to mention him much this year, but he had a nice game for the Volunteers. 4 catches, 56 yards, and a touchdown. 74.8 PFF grade. He's somebody who's probably going to be a day 3 pick, and I think that he may very well be a guy that the Seahawks look at to try to supplement the losses they're going to sustain at the position this offseason. Okay, interior offensive line. This was kind of a weird week. A lot of the offensive linemen that stood out played on teams that were not exactly dominant up front. Like, for instance, you had Zach Zinter, who didn't allow any QB pressures or any hurries or anything like that, no sacks. But Michigan honestly did not have a great day up front overall. They had 110 rushing yards, only 3.2 yards a carry. They allowed 3 sacks on McCarthy. But Zach Zinter played well, 70.2 PFF grade. He didn't do much of anything wrong. He did his job. It's just Michigan was having issues. Same for Connor Colby of Iowa. Now, Iowa's offense always has issues. 2.5 yards a carry, couple sacks on their quarterback. But Connor Colby didn't allow anything on his side, 73.3 PFF grade. Jordan Morgan really stood out this week of Arizona. They had their upset win over UCLA. 3.7 yards a carry, 3 sacks allowed on the QB, and Morgan himself allowed 1 quarterback hurry, but an 88 PFF grade is really stand out, especially in a crop like this. So Jordan Morgan, I don't know if he's going to be a guard at the NFL level, but if he is, he's actually building a pretty impressive resume. Cooper Bebe, KSU ran the ball for 40 yards, 1.4 yards a carry on Texas. And their quarterback, Will Howard, got sacked 4 times. But Cooper Bebe wasn't on him. 67 PFF grade. He continues to be one of the top guards in this draft. And this final one, this is really the first time this year I've had anything positive to say about this guy. He's been, I think, disappointing. But Donovan Jackson of Ohio State had a good game. Almost 140 rushing yards, almost 5 yards a carry, only 1 sack allowed on McCord. And Donovan Jackson didn't allow anything on his side, 82.2. So it was a weird week. We didn't have a lot of games where there was like, oh, this team ran for 300 yards, so let's look at the guard play that they had. It must have been really good. There wasn't a lot of that going on. It was just kind of, oh, this team struggled up front, but this guy played well individually. Defensive line. Let's jump on over to the defensive line here. Let's do the defense. T'Vondre Sweat, welcome back. And what a game this guy had. What a season this guy's having. We are getting close to T'Vondre Sweat first round pick. I love this guy. He had 4 tackles, 1 for a loss, 2 passes deflected at the line of scrimmage, 6 quarterback pressures. This is a nose tackle we're talking about here. 40 rushing yards allowed by the Texas defense. 89.3 PFF grade. This guy is so good. I don't know if the Seahawks want to do the 350-pound nose tackle thing, but if they do, get this guy. Love him. This next one's interesting. Dwayne Carter of Duke. Duke is, by the way, having a pretty hard time of things lately because of the loss of Riley Leonard. Now they don't have Graham Barton, by the way, so their team is a shell of their former selves. 8 tackles, 1 for a loss, half a sack, 1 QB pressure, and a pass deflection, but PFF was not a fan, 49.4. So, I don't know. I think PFF was pretty harsh. I don't know if I agree with this, but take it for what you will. Brandon Dorlus had a very interesting game for Oregon. He had 6 quarterback pressures, but no sacks and no tackles. So the box score says he didn't really do anything except deflect a pass. But he was harassing the Cal quarterback all day. And Oregon's defense was great, 286 yards allowed, 67.9 PFF grade for Dorlus. I wasn't originally going to put Nazir Stackhouse here of Georgia, but then he did a fat man with football moment, intercepting Brady Cook to basically seal the win and returned it 44 yards. Great play. He's got to make the list just for that. 80.2 PFF grade. Only had one tackle other than that, but when you have a fat man with football moment, it's got to be celebrated. Final guy will be Jerzan Newton. I mean, he's pretty good every week of Illinois. 3 tackles, including 1 for a loss, a sack, 3 QB pressures. Illinois only allowed 93 rushing yards, 2.7 yards a carry, 260 total yards allowed. And Illinois actually had a pretty decent week on defense, which is rare for them. It's hard for them because other than Newton and what's the guy's name? Andrew Nicholson, they don't have anything good. All right. So it was a good week for defensive line players. I'm impressed with what I see here mostly. Linebacker, there's some good stuff here too, including one of the best performances of the year from any linebacker that we're going to see. I'm not talking about Tommy Eichenberg. We'll get to him. We'll get to him in turn. Eichenberg did have one of his better games, I think, though. 12 tackles, only allowed 29 yards in coverage for OSU. 60.3 PFF grade. Pretty good. Jalen Ford of Texas had 8 tackles, 1.5 for loss. Was part of that run defense that only allowed 1.4 yards a carry. 12 coverage yards allowed by the Texas defense. 12 coverage yards allowed by Jalen Ford. 60.1 PFF grade. So PFF didn't love it, but nice game by Jalen Ford. I like him as a late round sleeper. Definitely a day 3 guy for me. Cedric Gray, another nice game. 9 tackles for the UNC defense. Again, UNC had an easy game this week. 3 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 2 pressures, 6 coverage yards allowed, so it was very good in coverage. UNC allowed 2.4 yards a carry and only 7 points, 66.4 PFF grade. Now here's the big one. Jeremiah Trotter Jr. having a disappointing season for the Clemson Tigers. Balled out. One of the best performances of any player this year. 11 tackles, 2.5 for loss, 2 sacks, 3 QB pressures, a pick 6, 28 yards, only 5 yards allowed in coverage, 92.8 PFF grade against the mighty Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Now that is a performance that gets your attention even though Trotter has not been great this year. So Jeremiah Trotter Jr. might be back on the menu, boys. I'm liking what I'm seeing a lot more from him lately. Tyron Hopper completes our list, Missouri. They fought hard against Georgia. 10 tackles, 1 for a loss, a sack, 3 QB pressures, 29 coverage yards allowed, 53.4 PFF grade. Not a great grade, but overall I was impressed with the performance watching it. I actually watched most of this game live. There's something there with Hopper. He's been a late addition to my lists, but I like him. All right, safety. We got 5 guys here as well. We got Jack Howell of Colorado State. 10 tackles, including... And, I'm sorry, not including, but and 10 yards allowed in coverage, 72.5 PFF grade. He's coming on strong. I think he started out a little bit slow. Finally, we have Andrew Makuba of Clemson. 6 tackles, 1.5 for loss, a pass breakup, allowed 25 yards in coverage, 59.7 PFF grade, which is actually not one of his better grades so far this year, but he finally was making some plays. He finally got my attention. So Makuba needs to be mentioned. Cole Bishop of Utah. Utah's defense was just so dominant. I had to have somebody here with them. 4 tackles, 1 for loss, a QB pressure, no yards allowed in coverage, only 83 yards allowed by the entire Utah defense combined, and 3 points, 74.3 PFF grade. So everybody on the Utah defense gets a gold star this week. Deshaun Pace, first time he's making this list of Cincinnati. He's a under-the-radar safety that is starting to get some good attention. 9 tackles, 2 for a loss, 1 pass breakup, 3 QB pressures, 12 coverage yards allowed, 68 PFF grade. Solid, interesting day 3 guy. I believe he is related to Ivan Pace from last year, by the way, who's proven to be a pretty good NFL player thus far. So let's get in on that maybe. Last guy is the Georgia one, Javon Bullard, UGA. 6 tackles, and he had the game-clinching interception at the end there on Brady Cook. Didn't allow anything in coverage. 0 coverage yards allowed. I think 0 catches. 67.5 PFF grade. Really good game. And that's it. That's what I got. So we found 5 guys at each position. The offense left me underwhelmed. The defense was nice, though. There was some nice stuff going on defense. So let me know what you guys think down below. Let me know if you guys think I missed anything. I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. And that's what I have for this week of college football prospect watching.